Okay, it wasn't always pretty, but the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, they're 4-0. And we'd like to talk about the Yellow Jackets during this bye week before they get set for a big stretch drive in the ACC after knocking out that first conference win against Virginia Tech. We bring in Joey Weaver from the Rumble C to the SB Nation platform for Georgia Tech Athletics. Hey, Joey, how are you?
Hey, Mark, good to be back.
Definitely. Good to have you back. Let's talk about Virginia Tech, because if you look at the scores and look at the opponents of the first three games, I don't think it's going to shock you that most of us just didn't pay a whole lot of attention, except that maybe Georgia Tech's not that good because these quote-unquote inferior teams are within a score or two. Then you play Virginia Tech. We know what they did against Ohio State. And sure, they lost to East Carolina, but that was very late in the game, and there's a lot of respect out there for the Pirates right now. So your thoughts after watching the Virginia Tech game and what you took from that game?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it wasn't always pretty by any stretch of the imagination. But I think, for a young team that saw a lot of inconsistency early on, it was a pretty great, gutsy win, I would say. They made some pretty big plays, really a few in particular that had a big impact on how that game turned out. And so, again, there were a lot of spots where improvement could be made, but overall a really good win that'll be good to build off of moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I was channel surfing all over the place, catching the end of that game. You made some huge plays on both sides of the football to turn it around in Blacksburg, which is not an easy place to play, even if it's noon and not a night game in Blacksburg. Still a difficult and very important division game to get right out of the gate in the ACC. Let's break down the offense, Joey. Let's start at the quarterback position, which we have to evaluate much different than most quarterbacks across the country statistically. So that 49%, if you're looking at any other quarterback in the country playing Power 5 conference football outside of the academies, so Power 5 teams, you're going to say, 49%. That's not going to cut it. Get rid of this guy. But 7 touchdowns, 1 pick, great ratio. He gets the ball downfield, and obviously it's a much different offense, and what that quarterback, Justin Thomas, is being asked to do is completely different. So your thoughts about his play, and specifically in the big game against Virginia Tech?
Yeah, he's been inconsistent at times, as with a lot of things on this team, but he's very streaky. I think he started the Virginia Tech game 0 for 6, and then he hit on maybe 3 or 4 passes to end the game in a row. And like you said, I mean, you have to judge it differently. His job as a quarterback in this offense is not to sit there and throw the ball 30 and 40 times a game and complete 3 out of 4 passes. It's more to serve a purpose, to open up the run game. And so I think from a passing standpoint, again, a lot of room for improvement, and obviously sub 50% isn't what you hope for, but it's been effective, especially getting the ball to DeAndre Smelter. He's really been killing it at wide receiver for Georgia Tech, and very well could be the next in a line of wide receivers coming out of the school going into the NFL. As far as in the running game, I think that's where he's really shined. He's pretty adept at running the triple option. Makes pretty good reads for the most part. He likes to keep the ball, which I think is an improvement over Vad Lee. Vad was not very interested in holding on to the ball any more than he had to. Thomas, on the other hand, is very comfortable keeping it, and his speed and acceleration has really come in handy at a lot of times this season. And so I think he's been really good. He's got some work to do. Even in the running game, his pitches can be errant at times, off target a little bit, but overall making some really good decisions. He's been the one that defenses are trying to force him to beat them, and he's doing it. So pretty impressive what we've seen through 4 games from him under center.
Hey, Joey, before we track down the rest of this offensive personnel, I just have to ask you this, because it's the different scheme that we see in Georgia Tech as opposed to everybody else. So the typical Georgia Tech fan, and I know there are different camps on this, but is it a badge of honor that you play a different offense than everybody else? Do Georgia Tech fans seem to take pride in that, or is it a thought that when you lose a game or two, and especially when you get behind and it's difficult to throw the ball, hey, we need to scrap this offense, we need to get a different coach, different offensive philosophy? What is your feel and vibe of what's out there among the faithful in regards to running this offense?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that everyone in our fan base, at least, and probably nationwide, their favorite offense is the one that wins games. And so, like you said, when a game is won and it's gone pretty well, nobody's really going to complain that much. But when we lose, that's kind of the first place that people look. And what's interesting about that, I think, is that even with the recent struggles in the last couple of seasons, people want to look at the offense first as being the problematic part. Well, it's also in the top quarter of the country in scoring offense pretty consistently. And so it's kind of like this obvious scapegoat for everyone, even though the facts don't necessarily back it up. The issues have been at other places at times. But I think that there has been a growing portion of the fan base as the struggles have gone on that they want to attribute struggles in recruiting to the offense, and they don't really like the grinded out nature of it. They want something flashier, something more passing. Me personally, I think when it's working, it is a thing of beauty, and I still thoroughly enjoy watching it. But again, my favorite offense is the one that wins games. So as long as they're doing that, I got no complaints.
No doubt about that, Joey. And we've gotten to a point where everybody's running the spread. Just about everybody's running the spread, and they're going for the up-tempo passing game. So that used to be fun to watch because it was unique. Now we get to a point where I know you don't want to win 6 or 7 games and go 6-6, 7-5, and just barely get to a bowl game, but you've had those kind of seasons. But at least when you have one of those kind of seasons, Joey, you don't get lost in the mass of all the other teams that are running the up-tempo spread offense, winning 6 or 7 games, finishing 5th or 6th in their conferences. Anybody who watches college football and follows college football knows Georgia Tech runs this offense, and it's kind of a badge of honor. At least you distinguish yourselves that way, even when you don't have a great season. The rest of the personnel on offense, you mentioned Smelter, wide receiver, making big plays. Your thoughts about the way the offensive line's coming together, the running backs, other than Justin Thomas carrying the ball?
I think the offensive line in particular has been pretty good run blocking, and I think that they've got a lot of room for improvement in pass blocking. As much as we talk about Thomas's completion percentage, I'm not really sure at this point how much of that is due to him not being able to him not being able to set his feet and throw so much as him not having time to throw. There were certainly a few occasions on Saturday, he was 7 of 18, so he had 11 incompletions. I would bet at least 3 or 4 of those were him throwing the ball away or him throwing, while he's running and doing all sorts of things because he just doesn't have time back there. In the running game, though, it's been really solid, and we're happy about that. The other piece to talk about on the offense is going to be Zack Lasky, the senior B-back. So far, he's been pretty consistent. Nothing really breakout or major yet for him. If I'm remembering off the top of my head, he hadn't had a 100-yard game yet. But again, defenses are kind of keying in on him, making Thomas beat them. And I think there's going to come a point in this season where a defense is going to say, well, let's try and key in on stopping Thomas. And I think Lasky's going to make him pay. I think he's much better, at least running the football, than David Sims was before him. He's a lot faster, a lot of bursts, and generally, very enjoyable to watch him carry the ball. And so I'm looking forward to the game where someone tries to, stop Thomas as opposed to Lasky, because I think Lasky will be able to do some pretty good stuff there.
And Ohio State's offensive line couldn't block Virginia Tech either, so your offensive line might not be quite as bad as it looked against Virginia Tech. So we'll see on down the line against some better teams in the ACC as well. Defensively, Quayshawn Neely, Kashawn Freeman, Shawn Green making plays in the opponent's backfield. Did you like what you saw on Saturday and through the first 4 games on D?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest struggles this team has had is on that defensive front, particularly the front 4. They've struggled getting pressure by themselves a lot this year, and so we're ended up bringing an extra rusher or 2. And it's kind of a high-risk, high-reward strategy. If you can get to the quarterback and disrupt things quickly, then you've accomplished your goals, and pass defense gets a lot easier. But if not, then you've just opened up a lot more passing lanes to throw, and it's been pretty mixed results so far. The secondary, we worked a lot on the 4-2-5 this offseason, the nickel set of the 4-3. and it's kind of been to some mixed results. A couple of big plays early on. I think every single game actually, there's been a long touchdown, where there's just a breakdown in coverage somewhere or someone misses an assignment. And so that I think that the front four is a young group. They replaced 3 starters this year, and they saw just a ridiculous amount of attrition in the offseason. And so it was always kind of going to be an uphill battle, and they've kind of held their own, but I think we're going to see a lot of improvement this year as these first-time starters get a lot more playing time.
Joey, looking at the ACC race, of course, you've got the bye week now. You've got October 4th against Miami, another huge in-division game. This division, nobody distinguished themselves last year. Sure, Duke won it because somebody had to win it, but they won it at 5-3, so there was a glut of 5-3 and 4-4 teams, and it pretty much looks the same this year, at least on paper, that maybe after the game in Columbus, Virginia Tech was expected to be the best team, but not necessarily the case. Now they've got a loss in conference. So Miami didn't look great against Nebraska nor against Louisville. They got manhandled up front against both of those teams in the run game on both sides of the ball. How confident are you in a division, again, that's going to be up in the air? I would expect, again, 4-4, 5-3 teams all over the place. Pitt, Duke, a lot of decent teams, not great teams. How confident are you that Georgia Tech can possibly get out of this thing?
Well, let's just say I'm very confident in the possibility of it. But as far as whether it happens, I have no idea. We actually had a question on a post yesterday. We did a mailbag thing, and somebody was asking to rank all the teams in each division. And when we got to the Coastal Division, I almost started drawing names out of a hat. I was like, I have no idea about anybody in this division right now. UNC was supposed to be the favorite, and they just gave up 70 to ECU. Virginia was supposed to be garbage, and they've held their own against BYU and UCLA. Georgia Tech was thought to be middle of the road. They just won their most important division game of the year, probably. Miami was supposed to be pretty good. They've struggled. So I have no idea what's going to happen. You've got, like you said, a lot of teams, and the way that I usually put it is a whole lot of teams that aren't really any better than anybody else, and they all just kind of, it makes picking who's going to win games very difficult, very, very unpredictable. And so I do think that Georgia Tech has a very good chance. I think that each one of those games is very winnable. I also think that each one of those games is very losable. And just that's kind of the nature of it. And so a lot of folks prior to the season were picking somewhere between 8 and 9 wins. I myself thought 9. I think if this team can continue to improve at the rate that it has, and the offense can continue to develop and succeed as it's seen so far, I think that this team is very capable of 8 or 9 wins, and I think that a lot of folks would be pretty happy with that.
And when you're trying to select a division winner, when it's so balanced, that's almost where it goes back to scheduling. You almost have to look at the schedule and see who's playing Clemson, who's playing Florida State, definitely, because you can almost tack a loss on to definitely the Florida State opponents, and it's unfortunate that it comes down to that, but then you got Louisville, who should be strong, but hey, Virginia knocked them off, so that's a huge win for them because that was probably counted upon by most of us as a loss. And then you look at the rest of the division that's very beatable, and if you're playing like a North Carolina State and a BC and somebody else is playing Louisville and Florida State, that's a huge advantage for that first team. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting in this race as well. But you got a big one against Virginia Tech in the bag and Miami coming up. So, Joey, let us know what you're working on right now.
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of coverage, I guess, of the games. We're trying to get some pretty constant stuff. One of our fun things we do every week is the over-unders, and so we set these completely arbitrary lines of what you're going to see in the game. So might be over-under 200 passing yards for Justin Thomas, which easier picked maybe than other things. But and then we always also like to go with the spread in these games, and so let's say Georgia Tech's a 7.5-point favorite. Over/under 7.5-point margin of victory for Tech. So it's a fun thing that a lot of the community gets into. That's always a good time, and we've been a lot of building as well. And we do game threads as the game is going on. So folks at other places that aren't able to be in attendance, they're sitting there talking about it as it goes on. And it really is a lot of fun, and so we definitely recommend you guys come on over, check it out. we're trying to get a pretty constant stream of content coming at you, and it's coverage of Georgia Tech in a little bit of a different way. It's by the fans, for the fans, and so that's really been our calling card over the last couple of years.
All right, Joey Weaver from the Rumble Seat. It's SB Nation's platform for Georgia Tech football and athletics. Hey, Joey, thank you so much for the information and the insight. Your team's 4-0, bye week, then Miami, so hopefully we can catch you on down the road.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Go Jackets.